Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for our 5th session of our Using Lean Six Sigma Black Belt Skills Outside of Lean Six Sigma Projects. Today the topic is implementation projects, and Rick Haynes will be speaking with us again. And to go over a few of the logistics, this again is 1 hour. We encourage questions during the session, and if we cannot get to them, we will definitely cover them afterwards, so please be sure to enter questions. You will receive a copy of the slides as well as an email with a link to view the recording of this session, so please be on the lookout for those. Also, you have the option to opt out of being contacted by Smarter Solutions. Just be sure and fill in the exit survey at the end of the webinar. Again, I'll turn it over to Rick Haynes, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for listening in, everybody. Again, today's webinar is about implementation projects, not improvement projects. I will be referring to the Integrated Enterprise Excellence Volume 3 book because that is the book in our series that talks about project tools, which are the ones we'll be using for this. It could be quite interesting. I've given, this is the 5th one so far. Forrest Breifeld will be giving the next 2 because of some travel I have to undertake. And I'll see you for the last one on number 8. But this one is the first one of these I think I learned something in preparing the webinar. So it'll be a bit different than the last ones. Not as many graphics. What this tied to is the knowledge and the process we use for DMAIC. I guess I'd missed something my whole career as a Master Black Belt that I feel a bit sorry for. Let's start talking about, as we go into the thought about implementation projects, I'd like all of you to go look at this question. And it's really about how does your organization manage implementation projects. Now, an implementation project, considered anytime they say, Joe, I need you to get this equipment installed, or we have a new software coming in, or they tell you to adopt a new practice, we're going to introduce a new format, something like that. Assume there's a single leader, we'll call him the project manager, and the question is how does your organization manage the process they need to go through to run their project? Can the project manager do whatever he wants, or she? Or do they have a standard reporting format, like a PowerPoint template that you'll report on every month how you're doing? The third one is there's a very strict rules. This is how you're going to do it. Here's how you're going to plan it. And the last one is, I don't know. So if you'd march in there, it looks like the winner is the one that I would have expected this time. If you give you another few seconds here, and Mallory will close the post out. And the winner is, you can do whatever you want, the project manager's choice. Now, I'll tell you right now, I believe that is not the right way to go for most organizations. You need some standardization of this, and we're going to be talking about one method to standardize it using some of the tools we learned as Lean Six Sigma participants. All right? And again, any question you want to ask, just throw it up there. So what's the objectives of today's talk? Well, one is I want to describe the difference between an implementation project and an improvement project. And then we're going to go through the DMAIC, or the Lean Six Sigma tools, that can be used on an improvement project. And this time I'm going to follow DMAIC in the format's different than the earlier ones. I'm going to say, here's what to do, here's why you do it, then we'll talk about how. This topic seemed so different to me when I actually put this one together. So I'm going to start, why did I want to add this to the seminar list? Well, I guess I've always been bothered by how many people went to a champion or a sponsor training and came back with suggested improvement projects that would say, go do this. It wasn't about solving a problem. It was about implementing something that they really wanted done. And part of it is, even if you've been a Black Belt or Lean Six Sigma participant for a while, you've done project management at some level, and we forget to use some of the skills. So first of all, let's define where you get an implementation project. What is it? I'm going to decide it's a managed effort to implement software, equipment, policy, training, skills, whatever. But it's a managed effort. Now, what's common between this implementation project and a DMAIC improvement project is the managed part. Well, I guess you're going to drive change with both of them. But in reality, the only real difference is there's no troubleshooting or solving to do in an implementation project. And that was my epiphany when I went through this, is they're almost identical with the exception of Analyse Phase. So that's what we're going to see as we go through this. What we're really going to do now is I'm going to walk through is how you take the performance required through the implementation effort to become equivalent to the project metric for your DMAIC. Now, I'm going to go back, and some of the things I like to talk about in teaching is many implementation projects are disguised as improvement projects when they try to put them in the project pipeline. You get things like lead times are exceeding the customer requirements because of an inadequate tracking system, or the equivalent, where they define the problem by not having my solution in place, as I would call in class a solution masquerading as a problem, the lack of a solution masquerading as a project. So how do you recognize that? This is where I realized I had my weaknesses as a master black belt. What should you do if you're provided with a problem statement that really defines that lack of a solution as the problem? Well, I put in bold here, and I mean it, don't just throw it back for rework, which is what I've done up until this week writing this. I would have said, define a problem. We don't just do implementation projects. Go to someone else to do that. But I said, if you step back, what's going on? They may have just needed help in managing the project. I mean, the one I think most common, though, is they don't have any support for what they want implemented, and they expect you, because you're a Six Sigma person, to not only get the extra emphasis, but you can collect data to prove they're right. And the last one is probably the cheesiest. Sometimes they're just looking for an extra body to work. And I think that was the thing I fought most when I managed my own Lean Six Sigma program, is they write a project just so they get an extra person in their organization working that they didn't have to put in their budget. Well, maybe you haven't seen that, but I have. So what should you do when you get an implementation project? Well, I'd start with the tools we learned in Lean Six Sigma. Ask them what the problem is that they've stated the solution to. Use the 5 whys. I mean, why do we need to do this? Why is this the best thing for our organization? What you're going to do is they're going to, whether they realize it or not, give you the problem that the organization's facing that they have decided this is the solution to. Now, I would then, I guess now what I would do is offer to assess the problem for to make sure that that's the best suggestion. Offer to go help some resolution, test it out, maybe there's something better. These are all define phase actions while you're trying to formulate a problem statement that we all deal with in every improvement project. Now, if it ends up this is a good, valid solution, they're willing to pay for it, it looks like it'll work, you may offer to manage the project for them if it's going to benefit the company. Now, most Lean Six Sigma organizations would run away from that, but if you step back at the true reason we have Lean Six Sigma or improvement programs in our organizations, is to make the organization better. I recommend that you don't get arrogant enough to say, I'm only going to do an improvement using these Lean Six Sigma tools. If it's not in my bin, I don't want to do it. Because really, if you're adding good to your company, you're adding good to your company. This comes up to our second question. What I'd like you to do is mark which one of these best describes the involvement of your, I call it the Lean Six Sigma staff, or your improvement folks, in just implementation of initiatives and programs and projects and equipment across your organization. My last company, I had them in a lot of them, even though I did it, I could have done better. But some get so siloed, they won't let their people do it. What we're coming up here, we have wow, half of us are picking, may or may not be involved. So if they're involved in that group, they probably get there. All right, I think we can close the poll out now. Appreciate your inputs. What we're going to see is, you should all see it now, we got a pretty strong may or may not. It's by random chance. And that's what I found when earlier in my career, and I talked to a lot of students, is they're involved if they push their way into it. But not many people go looking for them because they say, well, you just do Lean Six Sigma. But I think we've forgotten that a key skill we've gained is managing a project. And that's why we're here. What I believe now is that a DMAIC improvement project includes nearly every aspect of a straight-up implementation project. And I'll tell you right now, you do not have to be an expert in the place that you're doing the implementation to manage a project. I was on a consulting job, I guess the last calendar week. There was a project manager we were consulting on a big improvement project. The manager for the improvement effort had no idea what the work was. He was just an excellent project manager. Worked out quite well. He knew when to ask why. He knew how to listen. So you really can do this even if you're not an expert. Now, for the discussion on forward, I'm going to assume you were asked to implement something into the existing workforce. Maybe it's a new thing for purchase orders. It's a new piece of equipment, a new technology, a new IT solution. It doesn't matter, but assume you're trying to implement something on your workforce. So let's start with the define phase. You're given this project. What are you going to do? First thing is formulate a problem statement. And so the left-hand side talks about what you'll do. Identify the problem statement that's being addressed, or the problem being addressed by the change. Measure its impact on the organization. Identify how success will be defined. Or my favorite question, how will I know when I'm done? I use that a lot when I'm coaching black belts. How will you know you're done with your project? Because if you don't know that, don't start it, or it may be the never-ending song. Yes, Mallory?
Rick, here's a question that ties into this problem statement but you spoke to earlier, and they ask, are you saying that we should not reject bad problem statements?
Well, I guess I sort of did. But I guess if I define bad as it was really an implementation effort, but honestly, if someone took up enough effort to propose a project, I don't think you should throw them out or reject them wholeheartedly. Work with them. Use your 5 whys, because they're asking for help for some reason. It's almost like you don't want to be a psychiatrist, as in the mental health stuff, but you're the equivalent to process health stuff. Why would they bring it up and be public about a problem they need help with? I don't think I've ever worked at a company that you were rewarded for bringing up your problems. So there's a reason they're bringing this up to you. Talk to them. Figure out what it is. You may find it's not an issue. You may find it's bigger than you ever imagined. But I would never throw out anybody who proposes something, because there's something there they wouldn't ask. So thank you for the question. Back to this. Now, why do I put these 3 things in for a define phase? Well, first of all, if you don't know the problem that whatever you're implementing this to address, how are you know you did it right? And that's why it goes to measuring current state. If you don't take a minute to measure what's going on right now, that they're going to implement this, how do you defend that you were a value-added step to the organization? And the last one is, you need to know what success is so you don't overdo it or underdo it when you get done. Now, I speak to these. I actually had a black belt project that one of our students had probably last year. And they were upgrading a piece of equipment so it had a higher capacity in the same period of time. It did batches, and they were going to move the batch size up. It was like from 8 to 10. But it was a whole bunch of stuff. It cost us significant money in all these work centers to do it. And about halfway through the project, when we were doing all this stuff done, he realized that it slowed the process down to get 10. Well, they thought that was okay because now you're going to load it less often. But when we mapped out the numbers, this improvement was going to actually cost them more money and reduce the total amount of capacity of the factory. Well, what should you do? I mean, he called me and go, what do I do? Do I tell them we shouldn't improve because it'll make it worse? And we had a long discussion. And he really did, went to his management and pitched the whole thing out. And they said, oh, my goodness, you're right. But we're still going to do it. And he goes, why? Or do we want to do this to make it spend more money to make our product and actually lower our capacity? And the answer was they've committed to do this to their customers, one of their improvement roadmap things they had, and they couldn't go back on it. So pride was more important than money in this case. They just budgeted to buy more equipment to keep up. So you really, even on an implementation effort, you must look at these. Now, how do you do all this? My recommendation, go find the person who wrote the implementation proposal and ask them why. Read the proposal. And I tell you, reading of what people write down is sometimes more important than talking with them. And read all the comments on the approval, because something was done before they decided to do what you're being asked to do. Because it must be in the budget, it must be funded, staffing's been planned and everything. Go read about why they did it. You will find the first lead on why. You should be looking for the reason or what the problem is that they're addressing. And I list 4 common ones. They need more capacity, the quality isn't good enough, the capability is not adequate. In other words, they have to make it better, or just to reduce cost. Those are all reasons people implement things. So in the measure phase, we're going to start with our DMAIC tools. First, the goal is to get the scope of the project. Now, what do we have? It's not listed, but the SIPOC does it. You look at the baseline performance, you do voice of the customer, and then you build your plan to execute the implementation. All right? That's the measure phase. So at this point, we've got the problem. We understand it. The business has got a handle on it. You know the measure of success, what the metric is. Now we go into measure phase, very similar to a project. Get the baseline, collect the VOC, execute. Now, when I measure the baseline, I'm going to talk about it in the Integrated Enterprise Excellence method, where you do a baselining step that involves a control chart and a capability assessment of the existing performance that you're working on. Now, if you don't measure it, how do you know you change it? But I missed another key point. In a project, we call them secondary metrics. You should also measure the things that could go wrong if you screw it up. You may increase capacity, but increase the labor rate. So you should baseline all the current performance so at the end of your project, you can demonstrate you didn't make anything worse, and the one thing you were targeting got better. The next one, I think, is probably one of the most skipped actions that you take, collecting voice of the customer. I've had a student tell me, I guess this wasn't a student, it was one of my, somebody I mentored through other stuff, my last company. He goes, why do I have to go do this? They've just given me a direction, go do this, implement this equipment so we can have the capability to do X. Well, I said, but there's more to it. And I said, you need to go collect all the stakeholders of the operators, the downstream customer, the upstream customer. It may be the procurement group, because you need to find how this one thing you're doing impacts everybody around you, because you may find you can improve something that isn't really key but can make everybody's life easier. It's almost like 5S in the work area that you're doing an improvement on. You didn't need to do 5S, but you're going to find great things to improve. So you want to understand what everybody expects out of this, not just the person who wrote the proposal. Next one's building a plan. You got to have a plan. If you don't, I can guarantee you'll be late and you'll forget something. Now, generally on an implementation project, they're not trivial. I would recommend, and what we have written down here is a Gantt chart for your simple reporting. I have an example later. And I would recommend a work breakdown structure, WBS, for the complex management of all the tasks. I like the work breakdown structure. It's a very good tool to manage complex projects. It's very good on larger Lean Six Sigma projects too. After that, a risk assessment, because once you get your plan together, you got the metric, you got the historical performance, you need to ask, what can go wrong? What can go wrong with my implemented item? What can I mess up in implementation? What could I make worse? What might be a risk of getting done on time? You list all of them in an FMEA and then work to minimize all those risks before you start. Again, that's a huge one to get you done first or on time. And I find too many people forget it. They just work the plan. So how do I get the current state performance? Well, if it's capacity, you collect throughput data, overtime data, late completions, all of the aspects of an organization that show they're hitting close to their max capacity. For quality, If it's a quality target, failure rates, drop call rates, customer satisfaction, yields, again, overtime, rework, collect all the information that relates to a quality problem. Make sure that you understand what it is. And you can read these too. If it's a capability, measure the current capability within the goal, what percent is, and then afterwards. And for operating costs, it's sometimes tougher. You have to capture all the current operating costs as totals, and sometimes per unit, per transaction, per whatever, because your goal is to drive it down. I have seen a number of implementation projects that are meant to reduce the operating costs actually drive it up. And if you've read The Goal or seen the movie, if you've been a student of ours, that's what they did. They bought something to improve productivity that made everything cost more. We don't want you to do that. So how? Well, when you get your data, use the 30,000-foot level methods. Now, that was all discussed in the this webinar series. So if you want to go back and review that, you will see what we're talking about. But it's basically an individual's chart to show that the process is consistent. Once it's consistent or predictable, you can then predict what's going to happen because it's in a stable region. Voice of the customer. Well, I talked about earlier talking to the person who proposed it, but really you got to go through all the stakeholders, everybody concerned, collect all of their inputs, and use all of these ideas to refine your plan. You'd never realize how I've learned some really neat things by asking these questions, whether it's just in the height of a table, moving the order of something, changing where something is on a screen, moving the clicks together, the locations on an IT screen that they click and order, put them closer together. These are stuff that you don't see when you just get your implementation project. You don't get it until you work through the people that are actually doing it. Project plan. Again, I recommend a Gantt chart for reporting in your presentations, work breakdown structure for tracking. Now, this is a project. You should plan it. Now, if you've never taken a planning course, and it's probably worth it. I mean, there's extreme ones. The Project Management Institute teaches some nice ones, but there's operations research courses and such as that. But what you need to know right now is if you want to plan something, you start with the due date and work backwards to today. If you start from today and work forward, it always seems to take too long. So start by your constraint and work towards today. Fit all the tasks into the plan. Identify all your dependencies. This has to be done before that. And then plot it out. But what you find right now is, do I have enough time to get it done? By doing it this way, you can start looking at, boy, this will take 2 weeks because I got to measure something, then order the piece to go in there, and that takes 2 weeks. I don't have it. You begin negotiating a due date if you need to. Publish this plan. It should include the tasks, who's responsible, plus their start and stop dates that are planned. Now, when working the project, you keep those in place, but you track the actual starts and stops versus your plan. This is how you measure, are you on target to complete on time? And I will note here, your plan should include everything, not just implementation, all the documentation, all the training plans, training programs, materials, orientations, maintenance, stocking the warehouse, training all the maintenance people, making sure the IT system's got someone who can handle it. All those things need to be in your plan. Here's 2 examples of them. Work breakdown structure, not a great one. I just pulled it out of our black belt class, so it's more about projects. But what you'll see is it's got columns, and they can be, this is the right to, or left to right. I generally make mine top to bottom, but it fits better on a slide this way. You got a goal. You list the high-level things that need to be done. Each high-level one breaks into discrete actions, discrete items. Each one gets a name and a date. Gantt charts at the bottom. This is a simple one made in Excel. But you show one bar showing start to stop planned and one for actuals. Now, if you use Microsoft Project, it can provide you both of these if you want. But Microsoft Project's got a very long learning curve. I would never recommend someone start a project and learn it at the same time. But I also find there's people that are very good at it in every organization I've been. If you are weak at this stuff and planning, like everything else, go find someone who's good and put them on your team, because your job's to be successful, not to do it all yourself.
Rick, we have a question.
All right.
I've never heard of a work breakdown structure. Can you tell me more?
All right, let me go back. Okay. Work breakdown structure. Now, you may catch me fibbing a little bit, but as I remember, they came out back when PERT charts came about, and that was from NASA, the military, I think the Polaris missile program. PERT was a program evaluation review. I don't remember the T, but it's probably technique. And what they were doing is it was one of the first widespread, diverse projects they had to manage to get it done on time. And there was a couple of aspects of it. And this may sound unprofessional, but Wikipedia has got a pretty good guess of what it is, and it'll explain it all. I actually did review it before I came in here, just in case. I go through all the potential questions and look at them. But the things that were specific about a work breakdown structure is it is a list of specific outcomes, not necessarily actions. So it's nouns versus verbs. Every breakdown, if you see in my diagram on the screen, it's got the goal one, then the phase, then the deliverable. But each of those breakdowns should include 100% of the work, and you keep track of what percent of the project is in each one, and that way you can track what's getting done. No item should be more than 80 hours long. No deliverable should take more than, I think it's 1 reporting period. I think that's all I'd say on. But you'll find it's not much different when you see when written out and using Microsoft Word to build an outline where it's 1 and then 1.1 and then 1.1.2 and 1.1.2.4. It's that same type of structure for tasks.
One of our participants added that it's a good discipline tool to keep the team on track. So some feedback.
That is a good statement. The thing I like about it is we struggle sometimes to track project progress, and even a Lean Six Sigma project. But by looking at these outcomes and tracking them individually, you can show what percent are late, what percent are on time. But it's also, if you've done it like it normally done at each task, you put down what percent of the effort is assignable to it. You can look at what percent of the time you have and what percent you've accomplished with respect to your work breakdown structure, and have a relatively good metric to show your chance of getting done on time. So it is a good tool. So thank you for the input. It looks like some people have heard of it. Back to risk analysis. Like I said, once you get your plan, once you got your metrics, once you know how everything's going, you've talked to your whole voice of your customer stakeholder list, the next thing you should do before you start is create a risk assessment. I like FMEAs. But it should target potential failures to the implementation effort. In other words, not getting done or getting done late. I guess some people would add not accomplishing all you're supposed to accomplish. What you do with the FMEA, like all of them, you then address all the high RPN or the risk priority numbers and all high severity issues, depending on what your internal rules are. Generally on the 1 to 10, it'd be the 7 and above. All of those are addressed. Now, a lot of times we've got to start the project right away, so I would enter these activities to mitigate risk into the early phases of my project plan. Now, I'm not going to do any more time on risk analysis because it is the 8th session we're going to be talking about. We're going to have a good discussion of risk assessment in different roles throughout an organization. I guess that one will come. I actually had a Lean Six Sigma project given to me. When I walked through it, I realized all it was an FMEA. So the entire project was one big FMEA. So we're going to talk about how to recognize them and how to use them. So you can look forward to that after, I guess it's the last one. So what's Analyze Phase? As I said earlier, Analyze Phase doesn't really exist in an implementation project. And as I sat down and thought about it, I realized there are some cases you may do some of those type of tools. If you're putting in equipment, you got to validate, does it manage the temperature right, or a measurement system. There are capability assessments that are real local to a piece of equipment or an IT system that you would check as part of this, but they're really not measuring the overall impact of the whole system, just different specific pieces. It'd be like looking at 1X versus the overall Y in a project. So there may be some, but generally we don't do many of the statistical tools at all. Which leads us, I think, to our last question, except for your exit survey. This is interesting to me. Is where would your organization call an implementation project complete? So this is when you get to check more than one. So you read through them. They're sort of in the order of tasks that I would see done for an implementation project. One is it's just implemented. One is they've verified that it meets the needs. Next one is you've built all the training materials and documentation around it. The next one has got a process monitoring established. It's been introduced into your scorecard. You got a process control plan. And the last one is troubleshooting guide and reaction plan is in place and accepted before you run the project. So let's see how we're doing. Okay, you guys are answering good. It's great. It looks like it's going from top to bottom, highest to lowest. Give it another 5 seconds or so. There we go, Mallory. If you look what happened, it looks like most people call it done when the process is working. A smaller percentage, which is just over 50%, at least verify that it works like expected. Then we get down to they don't have all the materials to train everybody in place, so we have to hurry up and catch up and get that done. The monitoring, the troubleshooting plans in place are even lower. Now, I believe that's exactly what I've seen in most companies. But I also think if you did this for a Lean Six Sigma project that you were working for me, I'd scream if all this stuff wasn't done. But somehow, we don't expect that discipline of our project managers. Doesn't make sense, does it? I bet you see we're going to the control phase, aren't you, when we're going to this stuff? And yes, that's really what this question led to. Let's talk about the last two phases, the improve phase. At this point in your implementation project, you've got it scoped, you're working the pieces, you're walking through the work breakdown structure. What we're going to do here is we validate that we were successful. So we're going to collect performance information at the end and compare that we really made a difference. Because I'll tell you, they spent money to get where you are at this point. Your labor, the team's labor, the equipment, lost production, all that stuff. So there's been a lot of money spent. So how are we going to do this? First, we look at our WBS, the work breakdown structure, to make sure we really did everything. I'm embarrassed to tell you how many times I've looked back once and said, oh my goodness, I forgot something. It wasn't in the critical path, I just didn't get to it. So make sure you actually got them all done. And the why, you just should. Then you measure the performance after it's completed. Okay, without this, how do you judge it really works? The expectation is you're going to turn over this implemented process to somebody. You darn well don't want them calling you every 5 minutes because it's not working right, so verify that it works. Compare the before and after performance. Now that's a classic improve phase tool using hypothesis testing. You need to show that it's significantly different. One data point may not be enough. You may need to run your assessment for a week or two to get enough data to show significance, but you're not done until you show significance. And then complete the training materials, the maintenance materials, the scorecards, the documentation. Make sure it's in the preventive maintenance program for equipment. Make sure it's in the audit list for processes. If you miss any one of these, you're not doing it, your organization right. You can still lead to failure by not doing those. Now here's a quick example of showing the change. We like control charts to show a visual change. You can look at the new capability at the end, and you can do a test to see if it's significantly different. All right. This time, as I was going through this, I thought we should consider pilot testing as a topic here too. If you're doing a big Lean Six Sigma project with a major improvement, you would probably pilot test it to make sure you got everything right, especially if it's a big deal. And in implementation projects, I have found that that's a good thing in big changes. Actually put it in your plan. We're going to pilot test it in a small group, and you should pilot test not only the implemented process, but all the documents that go around it, the training, the preparation, the management, the data collection. Get the bugs out before you go big. If you're with an organization that's got more than one site, surely do one that you got some level of insight on before you spread it out to all of them. So get some bugs out. It's a good thing for big ones. It's the end of improve. So at this point, we've got the implementation. We got all the pieces together. We know it'll work, and we started implementing. Control phase. As I tell people in class, this is one phase that Lean Six Sigma brought to process improvement that I hadn't seen before. It's a control phase. Now, if we go by the histogram of the last question, 60% of us would have called it quits or complete before this step was even started. But this step, as a Lean Six Sigma practitioner, should be obvious. If you don't implement a control plan, the new process, just like we would on our improvement projects, you've still probably failed to do best by your organization. What should it include? A control plan. How to manage it. Reaction plan. In case something goes wrong, what should they do? Routine monitoring methods, whether it's audits or sampling or whatever. It should have assigned ownership. I mean, who owns the process? And the last one, you should do a full report for an implementation project just like you would do for an improvement project. You never know who's going to take it as lessons learned. They may be doing another one similar. They may pick it up and say, wow, look at the level of detail they got. Let's just use that plan. So you should write and issue an entire report. If you think about it, these steps are identical to a DMAIC improvement project. All right. Now, in many cases, you may start working before you've got all of these pieces together, but you must ensure that they are finished before you call your project over. So what you might do is have a process start, but it's not at the end of your project plan. You go for another 2 weeks to make sure that, but whatever, you need to put all of these items in your project plan. So many project managers forget this. It always surprises me, and they walk away. It's like they just assume that everybody, once they're famous because they got it done on time, that everybody else will pick up all the pain and get it done for them. Just not right. So that really ties it up to the end of the DMAIC project. I know there wasn't enough, or wasn't as many charts and graphs, but this was really more concept-based. And since you all have seen this stuff, it should have made sense. So,
we have a question.
All right.
When running the pilot, how do you get the buy-in on the findings to establish repeatability?
Repeatability. I mean, it would. I guess that if you mean repeatability, that it'll work somewhere else. I mean, it goes back to the whole concept of pilot testing. If you do your pilot test, there's some rules in the class, and this will be from memory. It should be of a large enough scale that people believe it applies everywhere, but it shouldn't be so large that it's unmanageable. You should use typical people on it, not the best and not the worst. It should be complete. One thing that I think that's a key that most people do is it should include an implementation of the training, the oversight, the measurement systems, not just does the process work with experts. It should be a pilot test of both the process and all of the introduction guidelines. And things I have heard about pilot tests, it's hard to argue with actual data. If you can show that there were, and then if you pull out your statistics and say, look, it was a significant improvement, p-value 0.000 something, it's hard to argue with that. Even the pessimists have trouble arguing with data. So at some level, what you're doing is you are pilot testing everything, even how you show it will work. Sometimes you need this if the culture or the leadership is not ready. They're not sure that they really want to go for it, or they're a little bit scared. Because, I mean, I see stuff like ERP systems that get put in. It's like once you start, you can't go back. But you can do little pilot tests and try stuff so there's not the fear that when you turn the switch on, everything stops. And it does happen. If I didn't answer that fully, please write back. But that's the point of pilot testing, is to collect the evidence you can't argue with. All right? As I'm wrapping it up here, my belief is you should apply the DMAIC structure to all implementation projects, and you will find a higher level of success than if you didn't. Now, the next bullet is, I guess, somewhat the point of all these webinars. The act of doing this will create a greater role for the Lean Six Sigma belts that expands your ability to help the organization. If that isn't darn well the only reason we exist is to help the organization, I think it's for your benefit to get outside of the silo as I only improve processes with data. Use those tools everywhere, and people will start needing you and wanting you. In the lean world, lean terms, it would be like going from a push system, you're pushing them out to get projects, to pull system where they're pulling you to go help them. You'll find that if you do this one act, it will overwhelm the people requesting your labor to help. Okay? I also think a black belt that does an implementation plan or project will gain real good skills and experience that will help them better on their improvement project when they get it next. Because so many of these things are identical. Any one of these you're helping improve your skill set and your value to the company. You see stuff in the, I'm thinking advertisements to hire. Hiring, job requests, job postings, a lot of them ask for black belt, master black belt, or green belt. Because what people know is that those are generic skills you can use most anywhere. And if you have that skill and that's what the job's posting's for you, they'll take a look and listen to you. But you're right, there's a whole equivalent project manager task that is probably equally, if not more sought after around the world for people who manage projects. Because it really is a gift. I guess it's a learned skill, but some people are really good at it and they can do anything. So both those skills, if you work them both together, it makes you a more valuable employee. So let's see, did I go through everything? We talked about the difference between implementation projects and improvement projects. And we spent some time going through the DMAIC tools that can and I'll say should be used on an implementation project and on improvement projects. I think that gets me down. If you have questions, please send them in.
This is just in feedback to the pilot question.
Yes.
And it was a comment. I think it should also ensure that all the customer CTQs should have been well tested. If they work, then I think it should be fairly translatable.
And I agree with that. And I think you have a really good point. I'm going to go back. If you didn't do that whole voice of the customer effort clear at the back or the front end, I guess, how would you know all the CTQs to test? That's why I find a weakness. A lot of project managers just do it and execute it. They don't realize what people care about. So that's right. If you've collected a good voice of the customer, you get all the concerns, the pilot test gives you a small sample of what your stakeholders will experience when they experience the implementation. So that's a great point. So thank you.
The next question, what do I do if the sponsor does not want this extra work done on their project?
I'm going to assume that you have an implementation project and you build your plan with all these steps. They say, I don't want that. I just want you to go get that software working. But that it puts you always in a hard spot. Do you do what the boss wants exactly or to his intent? And I'll tell you something. If they are that adamant about it, you probably just don't put it in your plan. You do it anyway because your goal is to be successful. If it doesn't work, it will reflect on you. But I would probably just start marching through it and do it anyway. The consulting job we had a bit, I guess, when I just got back from, the sponsor for the whole effort said, I don't want you to do this, this, and this because I don't think you have time to get it done. Well, those of us that were there knew we had time to get it done. So because he met with us right as we kicked it off, we sent a note back saying, we will get exactly what you're done, but if we have any extra time, we're going to do them too. And he said, fine. Well, we got done everything we wanted and more. And the sponsor at the end says, I can't believe you got all this done. That's the only reason he told us not to do it is because he didn't want us to get overwhelmed. But I think if you treat it that way, say, I will do what you ask. If I have time, we'll do these additional things. And you may have to schedule some of the control phase stuff after the planned implementation date because they don't want you to delay it once you're ready to go. And I'd say that question is no different than when you have a improvement project and the person who sponsored it, they only want you to work in my silo, and you realize what you're doing applies across the whole organization. They won't want you to do it. But again, your job's to do right. It's not to follow orders directly. But saying all that, I would never go directly against an order or a directive by the boss. Always keep some dancing room from that. All right. Looks like that was our last question. Hope you enjoyed this one. Again, it's the first one I guess I learned something out of too, just putting it together. Because I'll tell you something, teaching, you learn more doing a teaching event sometimes than when you're in the student chair sitting there listening. sometimes harder to teach than it is to do it. So I appreciate your time. When you exit, you will have the survey. Please fill it out. Give us any inputs. I read them after every webinar, and we adjust things as we go. Thank you very much.